Welcome to Chapter 2 on Settings. In this chapter, we'll cover how to get QuickShow set up for you as a user, and also to get it optimally set up for your projector. Normally, when you first start QuickShow for the very first time, you'll see something called a Quick Setup Wizard. If you don't see it, you can always access it by coming to Settings and then going to Quick Setup. So this is the Quick Setup Wizard. It helps you to quickly get QuickShow set up for you as a user. So we'll just go ahead and click Next. And the very first thing that QuickShow will ask you is your user level. How familiar with lasers are you? If you've never used lasers before, you should choose Beginner. And that way, QuickShow will tailor the user interface and minimize the number of controls that you see so that you can get used to using QuickShow and a laser and then build on that experience later. In my case, I'm just going to go ahead and choose Advanced User, and we'll click Next. The next thing you need to figure out and tell QuickShow about is the speed of the scanners that are in your projector. Projectors come with a variety of scanners and scanner speeds. The very least expensive projectors have the lowest performance scanners in them, and the most expensive projectors have the highest performance scanners. And normally on the package or in the manual for the projector, you'll see the speed of the scanner specified. And they normally specified like 10K, 12K, 15K, 20K, speeds like that. And so what you need to do is tell QuickShow the speed of your scanners and just click the button that corresponds to the speed. There's one caveat to this, and there's one projector manufacturer out there that advertises their scanners as being 50K, that's 50. But unfortunately, that's not the truth. They're rating their scanners in a different way. This is the actual ILDA rating, and you'll notice on that particular scanner projector manufacturer, they never say 50K ILDA, they just say 50K, and it's kind of like their own setting. And so the reality with that particular scanner manufacturer, projector manufacturer, is that it's not really 50K, 50, but it's rather 15K. So you just have to kind of drill down there and find out the real speed in what we call ILDA, the ILDA K speed of the projector, and then choose an appropriate setting here. Now this can always be changed later, and we'll be covering exactly how to do that in a later topic. In my case, I have high performance 30K scanners. I'm going to click that and click Next. And the next step in the quick setup is to specify the number of lasers that are inside your projector. Now this is not the number of colors that your projector is capable of making. For example, a projector with two lasers, a red and a green laser, can make at least 3 colors, red, yellow, and green. And so therefore what this is really asking is how many lasers are in your projector. For example, if I have a single laser projector, that single laser could be producing red, or it could be producing green color, or it could be producing blue. And that's why we have this little smiley face that has a little bit of red in it, as well as green and blue. And so you just need to figure out how many lasers are in your projector, and and you can just click on the button that corresponds to that. There is a line of projectors that's been out pretty recently called RGV. That's red, green, and violet. The violet laser comes out of a Blu-ray type DVD player, and so since those players are made in such large volumes, that violet laser that's in that player is very inexpensive. And so what projector manufacturers do is they'll remove that laser from that DVD burner and put it into a laser projector, and it's an inexpensive way of getting a full color projector. And so if you have an RGV laser, just choose this button down here. In my case, we have an RGB laser, so I'm going to press this button and click Next. And the last question that's asked by the Quick Setup Wizard is the type of color system used by your projector. And the type of color system could either be TTL or analog. Now, analog produces the greatest range of colors, and you can get different shades of the colors. And TTL can only produce kind of the basic on-off type colors. Even in the case of a RGB laser, if it has TTL, as many of them do, it can only produce 7 different colors. And so, now, if you don't know what kind of projector that you have, whether it has TTL or analog, what you can do is you might be able to kind of intuit this by the price that you paid. If you paid $1,000 or less for a projector, chances are it has TTL color system. And the reason is because these projectors normally have pretty low power as well. For example, a few hundred milliwatts. And the reason why the projector manufacturers sell these as TTLs is because they're trying to get the maximum amount of power out of the projector. It's a low power projector to begin with, and so if you shades of a low power tend to be, it would not really be very flattering for the projector. So those projector manufacturers tend to stick to TTL systems. The more expensive projectors and higher power projectors have an analog color system. And so in my case, the projector that we're using for this demonstration has an analog color system, so I press that button and we click OK. Since I indicated that I was an advanced user, one of the things that you might have noticed is that I have all of a sudden gotten some additional controls up here, some additional controls over here, and so forth. And that's one of the things that QuickShow will do when you inform it that you're a beginner or an intermediate user or an advanced. Sometimes people will contact us and say, hey, in your tutorials I'm seeing a lot more controls than I have, and it's because they have informed QuickShow that they were a beginner, and so QuickShow is really trying to reduce the number of controls you see if you're a beginner. And so now that QuickShow has been set up, what we could do is just start poking around on the controls, but the best thing to do next is to actually go to the projector settings and do some follow-on settings for the projector. So if we come over here to the settings menu and then click on projector settings, you'll see this dialog box right here. And when I click show it now, this allows me to show test patterns here, and clicking on this slider over here, we can indicate which test pattern we're going to see. And this includes kind of the most popular test patterns. And what QuickShow allows you to do is, in this area here, I can control the size and the position of the projection. And it starts off by default as about half size, so that just in case your projector, we don't want to overload your projector without knowing any better, so we started off pretty small. And so what you do with this gadget here, you'll notice that if I grab in the center, I can move the whole projection around, and if I grab one of the corners, then I can change the size of it that way. And so what you do is you just kind of get that roughly sized and positioned as you want. And as you can see there, that's pretty well there. And we'll take a look at some of the other test patterns that we have here. The next thing you probably want to do is take a look at the scan rate and the color shift. And that's best to do on this test pattern here called the ILDA test pattern. That's the second test pattern that we see. The first test pattern that we see is something called an orientation test pattern. And you'll see that the letters TOP here, that this is supposed to show up on the top. And so, for example, if your projector is wired incorrectly, or if you have it turned on its side, what you can do is you can click these check boxes to reorient the image to get it to look like it's supposed to right here. What it's supposed to look like is spelling the word top, T-O-P, at the top. And so if it is rotated around, basically what you do is through a series of checking these check boxes, you just look at the projected image and see when it looks correct, and then that's that. In the case of this projector here, it's wired correctly and it's sitting flat on the floor, and so I don't really have to rotate the image or anything else. All three of these can stay unchecked, but in the case of your projector, just check the box until the image looks correct in the orientation test pattern, as it does right here. And so as I was saying, got a little bit ahead of myself, but we're going to look at the ILDA test pattern next. That's the second test pattern. And in particular, with this test pattern, I really want to look at two areas. The first area is, and it's hard to tell, and this is something that you're really projecting onto a bigger wall, and you might have to just kind of walk up to it to see it. In this case, I'm going to cheat a little bit on this video, and I'm going to make the image bigger so that it can become more obvious on the video. But there's in the center of this test pattern, there's a circle and a square. And what we want is for the circle to be just inside of the square. So it might be a little difficult to see on that video, but for example, if I change the scan rate slider here, and if I move this slower, what we see is that the circle gets bigger. And you don't really want the circle to be bigger than the square. You want the circle to be just inside the square. You also don't want the circle to be substantially smaller than the square either. You really want that circle to be basically just touching the outsides of the square. Now, in this case of this projector, we have 30K scanners, so by adjusting this to 30K, we can get the circle to touch the square. The second area of the ILDA test pattern that we want to take a look at is this kind of just below the letter Y here. It is this area here that I'm pointing to with a laser pointer. It looks like kind of like a letter Z to me. There's a line that goes across, and there's a line that goes down, and then another line that goes across the rest of the way. As we move the color shift, what you'll see is that the area, kind of the break in between those two lines, shifts around. If I move the color shift slider to the left, that break in the lines moves to the left. If I move the color shift slider to the right, that break moves to the right. Where you want to get it is right so that the break in that line goes straight down that vertical portion of the line, so it forms a little letter Z there. And it could be that you just can't get it perfectly, and that's okay. Just get it as close as you can to being making that letter Z like that. So once you've done that, you will have adjusted the scan rate and the color shift on the projector, and what you want to do is just adjust the size of the image so that it's just about the area you want, about the area of your screen. And that's kind of the quick setup. For a lot of people, that will be that, and you just click OK, and you can just start clicking on the images and starting the different things. And it will work fine, and you really don't have to get much more detailed than that if you don't want to, especially if you're not a very sophisticated person. That should be fine. If you want to do kind of take things to the next level and really tweak them out, then we can come over here to projection zones. And in projection zones, what we can do is we can make that pattern there, which has a little bit of a keystone to it, we can make that look perfect. And so to do that, what we'll do is I've just clicked this Show Test Pattern button, come over here to the Geometric Correction tab, and what I'm going to do is make it a bit smaller, and then come down here to Keystone. Keystone is the most common geometric correction that you will need. And when I go to Keystone, you'll notice that we've got these two sliders here. And one way to think about these sliders is that the pattern is going to get bigger in the area that I move this slider. So since in the video projection my image is smaller on the bottom than it is on the top, because I've got my projector pointing upward at the screen, and because of that it makes the image smaller on the bottom. What I can do is I can make that image bigger on the bottom and make it square by moving the slider downward. That makes the image that I'm outputting to the laser bigger, but since the projection is upward, what happens is it winds up correcting what the people actually wind up seeing. So I can move this slider downward to try to make that square. That looks pretty good. And another slider that I could adjust if I really want to get this thing tweaked in is something called pincushion. Now, pincushion corrects for curved lines. And so if I move this slider here, you'll notice that I can curve those lines upward and downward. In the case, the top and bottom lines look pretty well, but the left and right side lines look like I can adjust that a little bit. And so with just a little bit of correction there, we can get the video, the image that you see on the video, and that is the image that people are seeing when they look at it, really looking perfect. QuickShow does have actually 30 separate zones that you can use. In most cases, people who just get QuickShow and only have a single projector will only use a few of these zones. In fact, the scanner number, what we call the scanner number, is really the projector number that's connected to your FB3, is shown in this area here. So we're adjusting here the scanner 1 main. This is like the main imagery. This is where all of the graphics goes. The audience scanning is sent to a completely separate zone that we call atmospheric effects. So what you could do is adjust the atmospheric zone just as we have adjusted the main scanner 1 zone and do exactly the same kind of corrections. Or what you could do actually is put the atmospherics in a different area. For example, what we can do is reduce the size of this and then move the position upward so that this, anytime we send laser information to the atmospheric zone, for example, the normal audience scanning effects that come from QuickShow, these will appear over the heads of the audience now. But if we want to, we can bring that back down, make that bigger, and adjust that, like I said, just sort of in exactly the same way as we did the graphics. And in fact, what we can do is, for example, we can have the atmospheric, that is the audience scanning, completely projected over the area of the people. But when we come to the graphic portion, we can make that smaller and above the heads of the audience, projecting onto a projection screen or something like that. So that's really what projection zones is all about. It's about projecting things in a particular area for a particular purpose. If you want to do graphics, you can project that onto the screen. If you want to do audience scanning, you can project that directly into the audience or over the head of the audience. And it's all controlled by this projection zones dialog box. And you see the names of the zones here, and it's just a matter of clicking on the zones and then adjusting the size and the position. You have a lot of controls here, as you can see. You can control the rotation angle of the image, do keystone, pincushion. If you have to, there's advanced corrections here to make, to project onto spherical balls and things of that nature. Project around hemispheres and soda cans and things like that. So you have really a lot of controls here, and you can't really hurt anything. It's just a matter of clicking on the controls, moving the sliders, see what they do, and optimizing the image to make it looking perfectly. And so that's projection zones. So once again, the process is that you go to Quick Setup, indicate the type of projector that you have, the type of color system, go to Projector Settings to adjust the orientation, size, and position, and set up for the speed and color shift for your projector, and projection zones to get the geometric correction of the image looking just perfect for your projection screen. Now there's one last step to really getting the projector optimized and getting QuickShow really optimized for the projector. And it has to do with the color system. And one of the things you see is that really just starting up QuickShow and going through the Quick Setup Wizard, you could start projecting images and it will be okay. It may not be perfect, but it'll get a colorful display and be pretty much on the screen. But just like you can really get things looking geometrically perfect with projection zones, there's another thing that you can do to optimize the color systems, and it's coming over here to this Color Settings tab. When you indicate to QuickShow that you have a 3-laser projector or a 2-laser projector or a single laser projector, what you're really doing is telling QuickShow about how to set this particular area up. And when you tell QuickShow that you have an analog laser or a TTL laser, what you're really doing is controlling these buttons right here. And so that's really a very coarse, kind of a very rough setting for QuickShow to tell QuickShow what kind of laser projector you have. But there's something that you could do to really fine-tune the colors, and that is this. If you've got a TTL, if you've got an analog projector, a high-performance projector, you can get the maximum performance out of it by telling QuickShow that you have analog with log response, and then adjusting these color output levels to really kind of tweak in your colors. And the way to do that is like this. You bring up this test pattern here that has progressive shades of gray. Select analog with log response, and then move these sliders one by one, minimum red, minimum green, and minimum blue, to make it so that the very bottom circle here, it's barely visible on the computer screen, is also barely visible on the laser. In this case, on the laser projector, they're completely gone. It's just black out there. But what we can do is we can bring up these minimums like this. And what you'll see is that it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And we don't want to get it too bright like that. But what you want to do is set that minimum up so that that very first circle there is barely visible, like completely barely on. And in the video, you may not even be able to really see it, but it is there. So you do that for each one of these lasers, the red, the green, and the blue. For the green, I'm going to bring that up like this. And for the blue, bring it up like this. And what you start to see is that the shades of gray on the video, that is on the real laser output, really starts to match the shades of gray up here in this projection. And when I've done that, what I've done is, when we take a look at the dark colors here, we also see the dark colors on the video, just like it is up here in the test pattern. We take a look at the fully saturated colors up here. Looks good on the laser as well. The orange looks orange. That rose color up there at 11 o'clock looks rose. And the light colors also look light. We can see them. They're kind of a washed out white version of the colors, but they are there. If we don't do this, if we set this up the way it was, analog color, what you notice is that this is really completely white. This one here, we've lost our orange. It's turned yellow, and the rose is barely, these three colors are barely even indistinguishable from one another. And the dark colors, you know, I mean, there's really not too much difference between the dark colors and the full colors. So, and just jumping over here to analog with log response will completely knock out our dark colors. So, once again, going to this test pattern right here, bringing up the minimums so that the circle on the left is barely visible. Happens here at 20. And for each color, and we also have maximum sliders too. So for example, if you have a projector that has a particularly high power green laser, and the green tends to overwhelm everything to the point where you're not really projecting white, but you're projecting a minty shade of green, what you could do is actually bring down that green level and possibly get better colors that way. So for example, what I might do is bring down this green level to here, and might actually have to revisit this low level again. But once you get all this looking right in the grayscale, then your dark colors, medium colors, and light colors should all look good. And this test pattern here should also really look like it does on the computer screen. So this pretty much concludes setting up QuickShow in the settings. We've set up the user interface using the quick setup. We've set up the projector, the actual orientation, the projector speed using the ILDA test pattern, and the color using the various color test patterns. We've set up the projection zones to get the best looking grid, and also possibly moving around projection zones to make the audience scanning beam effects either above the heads of the audience or within the audience, so forth. So this concludes the settings tutorial. Look forward to the next tutorial.